I was out on the river. I was going to do some frogging, and I usually go out there, like I said, a few hours before, so I can just pretty much get a hand on to see how many people are going to be in the general area. If there is going to be anybody there, just to go frogging. If there's going to be too many people in that area, I would have moved to another area. But it's not all the time is there people out there. It's just I usually like to try to go out there a little early. Area that I go to, it's known in this area as the Oaks, and it's a big oakhead, and it's about I-95 is the closest main road, and we're probably a good, I don't know, about 20 miles off the road, and it's all marshland, so the only real way to get out there is an airboat. And so I was running along, and I was going out to the oakhead, and pulled up in there, and as I was pulling up in there, I seen something shoot off into the bushes, and I waved it off as a hog. There's a lot of wildlife around in this area. It butts up against a farmer who owns a lot of property there, and they put a lot of hay out there, so it brings a lot of deer in the area, and it brings a lot of hogs in the area. So I just pretty much passed it off as maybe it was just a hog, bringing up in there. And it may have just been a hog. I never knew it was the big guy. And I'm sure if there was the big guy, I would have seen the sheer size after, But anyway, I pulled my boat up into the oakhead and I spun it around. I usually try to get the front of the boat to point the river. So it's when I get ready to go, I just fire up and just, get the boat out to the river. And so I ended up pulling up there and I shut off the motor and I jumped off my front seat onto my bow, and underneath my seat, I got basket seats. I had my thermos down there, so I got my thermos out. I got some coffee, poured a cup of coffee, and when I went up to get back up into the seat, I heard something really going. It sounded like a freight train just running through the palmettos. It was just tearing up palmettos. And, I felt a little safe because I'm up on a boat. I'm probably a good, standing on the bow, I'm about 4 feet above the ground. When I stand up on my seat package, I'm a good 8 feet off the ground. So you're pretty safe when you're standing up on the seat package where your seat is. And then something started just banging the ground. It just hitting the ground, and I can feel the vibration in the ground from whatever was hitting. And then it was a few seconds later, something just made the most god-awful noise I've ever heard in my life. It was just a shriek, a screaming. It was just making all kinds of noise. And then that's when the mud started flying. And some mud flew out. Something hit the side of my boat. I didn't see what hit the side of my boat. I turned on my headlight to look in the back of my boat, and a big old piece of mud hit the back of my boat, hit my rudders. And I looked up and over to see what was throwing the mud, and I looked in the direction where it was coming from. Some flew over my head, and that's when I seen what I saw. And it was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. And I didn't know, it scared me. It was the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. I didn't know if it was really what I was seeing, or if it was there's oak trees all in there, but the color of them, he was a lot lighter than any of the trees. So you could pretty much make out what was standing there. And it was huge. It was super huge. The biggest thing I've seen in my life. And it scared me to the core. And he was big. He was huge. And he was pumped up, and he was very upset. It was super huge. It was a big dude. And it didn't look like a man, but it didn't look like a monkey either. I mean, I hear some people say they look like gorillas and all. It didn't look like a gorilla. And it had a brow ridge all the way across its face. It had a big mouth, super huge mouth. The eyes were kind of sunk in, and his face looked real leathery, like brown leather and rough. And he didn't have a lot of like real long hair or anything. The hair was like brown, light brown, like a leathery color. Had a beard. You know, it had hair around his neck area. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, he had junk, you know, you can see that. And he was just ungodly size. I've listened since then to certain stories on the internet and everything where they say they're super huge upstairs, their body and upper body and everything, and they're skinny, and their legs are real skinny. It wasn't anything like that. The legs were huge, his arms were huge, his whole body was huge. And he was just, and the front of my boat, I'd say is a good 4 foot wide, and he was every bit of that. He was huge. It was just a big mountain of meanness. He just was looking at me like he wanted to kill me. He was just looked like he was mad, very mad. His mouth wasn't open at that point, and I mean, all the noises that they made before that I heard, it had to have been that it made the noises, and I'm hoping to God there was only one there. For all I know, it could have been more. I don't know. I was just mostly focused and fixed on him because I was at that point then when I really knew who was looking at me and everything. I was trying to figure out in my mind how I was going to be able to turn around and fire up my boat and get out of there alive. Because I didn't want to turn my back to it because 25, 30 feet from where I was standing on my seat package was this guy. It was the big guy. And it would have took no time. I mean, he would have been on me before I would have been doing, if he really wanted to, I guess. He could have been on me and it would have been no chance. I mean, it would have folded me up like a pretzel. And I'm a big guy. I'm right at 6 foot, weigh about 240. And I'm nothing next to this thing. It was just hard. It was really hard.